I'm a beekeeper, and it's my full-time job. I've been keeping bees for 27 years. I'm 41, turned 41 2 weeks ago, and it's been a business for me for 11 years now. So it's my full-time work. I've got one full-time employee, one part-time employee. They help me with my bees. I'm running, it does fluctuate, but I've got approximately about 400 hives running at the moment. So now there's a lot of components to my business. Honey is the least thing I do. If I had my way, I wouldn't do honey. But people find out you're a beekeeper and they want to buy honey. So I actually sell a lot of my honey in a little honesty box system. I'm in the Big Smoke in Blackburn North. And I have in my house, just out the front, it's a little honesty box. So people come in and buy my honey there. But it's the least thing I do. As far as the components of what I do, I've got like a little online shop where I send things around Australia from various products like candles and so forth. Beeswax wraps, obviously they're really popular. I do that. I do a lot of pollination work. So as far as pollinating for various orchards, I target a lot of berries. I find berries are really good for the bees because they've got a higher amount of nutrition. I do apples. Luckily, they're only for 3 weeks, apples, but their nutrition is very poor, so it just helps with their income because with beekeeping, you can make a couple of dollars, but you hemorrhage a lot of money, even if you're a business or a hobbyist. So I do that. I'm also a licensed pest control technician. And I've heard a bit of talk about, so far about European wasps, Estrella germanica, and they are horrible little things. Now, as far as talking about those, with the wasps, they've got a very low foraging radius. It's 250 metres radius. So if you can find a nest, that's how you're going to target the problem. So obviously we can use things like baits and so forth, which is really good. One I heard this before using fipronil, which is really good using that in meat, but doesn't always get them because you've got a fine line between killing the actual, the target animal and the nest. So it's kind of a bit of a tricky one there. So if you can find that nest, that really keeps them at bay. So I do a lot of that work, pollination, and so I'm really lucky. I enjoy what I do. So how it all started was when I was 14, true story, I said to mum and dad, I don't want a kitten or a puppy, I want a beehive. And they said, well, geez, you want a beehive, you can save up your own money. So I saved up $60 and had bought myself the first beehive when I was 14. So I was obviously a little bit weird little child. Still a little bit weird and crazy. I've had them ever since. It's a hobby. I lived in Queensland for quite a few years. And it's for a long time as a hobby, and I'm a chef by trade.
Trying to get up to Sydney.
So that sort of worked together, obviously with the bees and the honey and so forth. So that's how I sort of started. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is where bees have taken me, and I've been lucky in the last 18 months. I've been to 6 different countries, and so I'm going to get a little bit of a snippet as to where I've been, what I've seen, and so forth. So so we've got a few slides now. It's going to be about 55 slides. So if I start, it's about 3 hours and everyone sort of nods off, just tell me to
Keep talking until we get to the slides.
So we'll bring up the slides, and then maybe at the end we'll obviously do some questions. So is there anything anyone would like to know?
Ben, finishing time is 9.
Sorry?
Our finishing time is 9.
Oh, it's 9, is it 9?
Sorry.
9 o'clock, okay. Okay, so we're now 2 minutes.
You're going to have to keep talking, I'm sorry.
So I've been really lucky in as far as where bees have sort of taken me. So it's interesting, the powers of social media. Obviously, it's a bit of a necessary evil with Facebook and Instagram. But I've sort of been lucky. I was managed to travel a lot around just from social media. So I actually find various beekeeping sites if I decide to go somewhere on a holiday, because holidays make great tax deductions. And so I find there various sites, Facebook pages, and I'll jump on there and say, I don't care if someone's a hobbyist who's got 1 or 2 hives, or if they've got 2,000. Some of the best beekeepers I know are hobbyists with 1 or 2 hives. I really am. Just because someone's commercial, they've got 1,000 hives, does not mean they know any better. I think hobbyist beekeepers are the ones I really resonate with because of obviously their passion. They've got 1 or 2 hives and they can really engage and know everything about their bees. And I really like that. I really admire sort of hobbyist beekeepers. So I was really lucky, obviously, with the powers of social media, it gets me travelling around everywhere. You can see this photo. I've literally made it nice and skinny, maybe a bit more slimmer. I do a lot of swarm removals now. I'm lucky. I barely feel bee stings anymore. So just in regards to, there's nothing cool about not wearing a suit. Make sure everyone wears a suit. There's nothing cool about that. I get stung on the face. I barely feel it. So I'm lucky in that aspect. People ask me how many times I've been stung, and I can honestly say probably tens of thousands of times. Just today, I know I've been stung over 50. Sometimes the repercussions are that the stings, I don't pull them out. My skin goes a bit funny because it's trying to push it out. So that does happen. But so that's me with a Ned Kelly look. Next slide, please. Thank you, cheers. First point of call was January of last year. I went to Kiwiland. Is there any Kiwis here? Of course not. So I went to New Zealand, and obviously the Kiwis are very passionate about their bees. Next slide, please. Obviously they produce manuka, or as they say over there, manaka is that sort of proper word. Now there's obviously a lot of hype about manuka honey. We've all heard of it. I'm sure everyone here has heard of it. This one specifically, they've got one species over there, Leptospermum scorparium, and that was in flower when I went over there in January. And they're pretty crazy beekeepers over there because they will burn hives. It's like the big commercials, they'll burn them. If someone goes next to them, they'll steal them. It's a big, massive industry. Here is, I connected with this lady. Her name's Debbie Keel. So she is the only female commercial beekeeper in New Zealand. She's in the North Island, just 1 hour north of Wellington. And so she's an ex-police officer, and she always loved bees and had them for a hobby, and she's had it as a business. So she's really interesting because she goes from start to finish. She packs her own manuka honey. A lot of what happens is a lot of producers, beekeepers, the manuka honey gets sent and it's all mixed in together, where she goes from start to finish. So you know you're getting a pure product, because with manuka honey, it's incredibly fraudulent. I think something like, I don't know what the statistics are, it's about 4,000 tonne gets produced every year, and it's about 40,000 tonnes get sold. So it's pretty fraudulent. So she was really interesting. So they're big on plastic frames in New Zealand because obviously the viscosity of the manuka honey when they put it into the extractors.
Ben, I'm just wondering, does that tea tree, does that flower in North and South Island?
Yes, it does. Yes, yeah. So the question there was, does that particular tea tree, different areas got different microclimates, so it'll flower earlier or later, but it is in the North and the South Islands, the Leptospermum scorparium. So I went here. I met a guy called John Berry. He's Arataki honey. He's the largest private beekeeper in New Zealand. He's running 20,000 hives. He's got just over 100 employees, and he's very, very interesting, very passionate man, and so that's him. So that particular Arataki is what you see in all the supermarkets over there. So it's a really popular brand.
Ben, you mentioned the plastic frames. I'd noticed that whenever I saw manuka honey and pictures of it, it was always plastic frame. But it's not just the frames, is it? They actually will use plastic comb.
Yes,
well.
that's right, exactly. So inside those frames, it's complete plastic, because if we use sort of wax that has, you can probably can't quite see there, but if we use wax sheets, and when they spin it out, they buckle out. So it's a lot different to our sort of eucalyptus honeys. There's only a few types of honeys you get in New Zealand. Clover, and Manuka are really the two types. There's Carnuka, which is like Manuka, but it's non-active. You can see it here. It's very thick. So that's just been capped and left for about 2 weeks. It'll go pretty much start to crystallise pretty quick. Very similar to the canola honey here. So this gentleman, he's quite interesting. Hussan, he's obviously got these cool number plates. His business was in Auckland, and he goes around with doing like various hoster hives and produces a lot of sort of nucleus hives. So he does, I guess, very similar to what I do. And it's once again all around the world. You know, the popularity of beekeeping is incredible. So it was good to connect with him. It was interesting too with regards to. I don't know if you can see that on the thorax, a little shiny bit. That's on its thorax. That is actually this one here. See, just there. That is a Varroa destructor. We are so lucky we do not have it here because it's an absolute horrible pest. Absolute horrible. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that tiny little dot on my finger. That's the Varroa. So it's equivalent to having, as far as a parasite, a basketball stuck on us. It's the equivalent size. So that's basically, there's a lot of research I just found out there. They sort of suck in the fats, the body fats of the bees. So there's a lot of research going on into these Varroa. The chemicals that they use, it's phenomenal because you're dealing with miticides, and that's where talking about beeswax before. I think I had Julian talking about it. Someone talking about beeswax. It's where in Australia we've got the best beeswax in the world for the sheer fact, fundamentally, because we don't have Varroa. Because those miticides, which are fundamentally a pesticide, build up in the wax. When they build up into the wax, often they can't actually, the bees won't respond to it. So they can only use that so many times with so many miticides. So it's very interesting there. So we've got the best bees in the world. So we're lucky. I think it was June of last year. We had an incursion coming from Texas. We would have seen it all on the news everywhere. Luckily it was contained, luckily it was winter time. Because if we, I think the statistics are there's about 1.4 to 1.6 million feral hives in Australia. That's feral ones. I think there's about 650,000 managed hives. As far as those feral hives, we get Varroa here, probably lose every single one. So that's a really big deal. Might have heard there's a podcast called Kiwi Mania. It's Gary and Margaret. They're absolutely crazy. They're really crazy. It's a good little podcast. If anyone listens, does a lot of driving and you listen to podcasts, Kiwi Mania is a really good podcast to listen to. So I sort of connected with them and saw their bees. And then we see the next slide. This is a popular way, and it's deemed organic over there, as using oxalic vaporization. That's how to kill the Varroa mites. So there's one way of using miticides, which you can't use the same miticides every year because the Varroa builds up resistance. This way is popular, so that's using oxalic acid. And it goes into a little vaporizer, which is the next slide, which you'll see, next one, you'll see that's connected to a battery. What it does is it burns it. And fundamentally, you're creating a vapour through the hive. And what it does is it fundamentally burns the legs off the Varroa mite. So it can't actually attach. So now, when you look at that, it really agitates the bees. You hear them hum. If you're on that next slide, you'll see... That's
the spoon there below the hive tool, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's actually the unit to actually use the
So
vapour.
you put the white powder in that.
Yes, yeah.
And that goes into the hive.
It goes into the hive, so it actually goes in. You've got to seal it off, and it really agitates the bees. They really hum. They really get agitated and annoyed. And as I said, luckily, we, as all beekeepers, commercial hobbyists need to make sure that Varroa mite, we do not get it. So that was in New Zealand. So as far as I was started June, I went to UK and Europe, and like most beekeepers are a little bit crazy. This guy here, Henry, he worked in the prison in Dublin. You can imagine, prison in Dublin, it's going to be pretty crazy, pretty hectic there. Anyway, he bought bees. He's a hobbyist beekeeper. He's got 6 hives, just so he can chill out, because he's dealing with some pretty heavy criminals in maximum security. and absolutely lovely bloke. He absolutely loved his bees, Henry. And also met these gentlemen, which is really fantastic to meet them. And once again, they were passionate. And the Irish, I absolutely love the Irish. They're a fantastic bunch. Here's a little apiary. A lot of I noticed in Europe and the UK, their hives are elevated. Even the commercials, they keep the hives off the ground. Fundamentally, because you're dealing with, even though it doesn't snow everywhere, they do get snow here. This was an hour and a half north of Dublin. They do get a bit of snow. It's only light snow, but it's really cold and wet. So a lot of the hives kept off just for the dampness. This particular day, it's interesting seeing when you go, when you travel, as far as how beekeepers, look at their bees, and I'm always a bit nervous if it's 18 degrees and I open up a hive. I always get a bit worried because there's a disease that they can get from Mycema, and over there it's 10 degrees that they're happy to open up their hives. And just because the bees are used to it. So that's an interesting aspect. When I travelled, I took a little drone just for a different perspective, and you can see why they call it the green isle over there, because it's absolutely everything. The emerald isle, sorry, it's absolute green. Everything's green. As far as the flora, there's not a heap. They've got a few different flowers, but we don't. In Australia, we've got such a diversity. I think we've got over 600 types of eucalyptus. So we get so many different more flavours, where over there it's very sort of consistent, sort of those heaps. Everywhere I travel, everyone's got their own national hive. So obviously we're all, predominantly got Langstroth. They've got their nationals, which are these big sort of frames. Now the logic here is because they've got bigger brood frames, keeps the cluster warmer over winter time. This guy's name's Terry. So he was 2 hours. So I've done a bit of travelling. Went up to just near Northern Ireland. This was just not far from Belfast, and Terry was amazing. Every second word was a swear word. Absolutely incredible. And I could barely understand him, but he was absolutely fantastic. So it's actually as a beekeeper over there, you can actually make a living on 100 hives in Ireland and Europe, which is that's interesting too. So then I travelled. This is over in Scotland. This is in Edinburgh. So there's a little sign there. And this is their Scottish national size, which is, I think it's the only difference is about an inch compared to the Irish. And here's a queen. They're sort of big on their buckfast bees, so they're really big on those. So they do have a certain resistance to varroa mite, but they do well in the cold conditions, because we complain sometimes in Melbourne, Victoria, about our sort of weather. Over there, it can be 2 days, 20 degrees, and it's raining for the next 2 weeks. So these particular bees. Now speaking of wasps, so this particular one, this is the Asian hornet, which has just come into relatively recently, I think in the last 2 years, into Scotland. Now we complain about our European wasps. These things are real proper bastards, these things. What they actually do is they'll hover in front of the hive and grab bees. And they take off and they'll chew the bees. And what they do is they chew their wing muscles and they eat their wing muscles and then come back. And they really decimate hives. So that was one I caught. And really, absolute devastating to the bees over there. So after Scotland, I travelled down to France. So this was up in the northern part of France, and I just thought I thought was really cool. So that's on that van there's like a little bracket, and that's how the beekeeper keeps his smoker. So it's always on the back there. So when it's lit, it's going from apiary to apiary. There's the smoker. Obviously, when you've got inside the van, it's gonna smoke you out. So he had this little bracket. I thought that was pretty cool. And there's some heather honey. I think that was ling heather, that particular one. Once again, everyone's big over in Europe and UK, big on plastic frames, really big, which is, I think, just because of the viscosity, once again, like New Zealand, but everyone, and obviously it's nice and easy too. Myself personally, I do it the old-fashioned way, wide up frames and embed the wax. These are elevated, so they're, this is Richard. So Richard's an absolute lovely bloke. He's an Englishman living in France, so he gets a little bit of a hard time being a pom. But so he puts all these bees like this actually on tyres. So he collects his tyres. Once again, they're all elevated, and that was just a different perspective there. So that was not far from the chestnut. Chestnuts were coming into flower. Very strong honey chestnut. It's the chestnut honey is really strong. It's quite a real robust. I'm not a fan of it. It's quite earthy and a little bit bitter almost.
What area? Perigord?
Yeah, sorry, this one.
Yeah.
This was in the north. It's near 2 hours north of Bordeaux.
No?
So there's Richard. So he breeds a lot of queens, and there's like a little mating nuke is what he has there.
That looks like a wooden frame.
Yes, yeah, that particular one was wooden because it was a little mating nuke for. He does a lot of grafts, so he breeds his own queens, and he sells a lot of queens too. So he has to use the little wooden ones and put the wax on those. I don't think that particular one they have actually a plastic frame, but anything that's a honey or just your parent hive is all plastic generally.
How did they decap the plastic frames?
Oh yes, yeah. So what they do, so they still, depending on, they've still got machines that'll do it, and it'll actually take the uncapper, still does it just like anywhere else. Yes, yeah.
Hot knife.
Yes, with a hot knife. Yes, yeah, because it's all done from the outside. Yes, yeah.
Don't you get some of the
Oh, it does, but it goes, even sometimes you get a bit of cheap plastic. I've known that to happen, and I actually did see it over there, but it goes through a strainer, so it's a bit of cheap plastic. So,
what was their reasoning for choosing plastic frames over timber?
well, the biggest one is once again going back to the wax, because the wax builds up these chemicals from using the miticides for a while. It was really interesting. Like they have big issues there because these various miticides, when they use them, the wax basically absorbs them. So when it absorbs these chemicals, it gets to a point the bees won't use the wax. So yeah, so that was interesting. So that's why they're using the plastic. So here is this is a beautiful spot. So this was just there. This is in the south of France. Near Grasse, and really this is you can see a little bit there on the middle left hand side. There's a bit of wild French lavender. And that was really, really nice honey. It's very subtle. A lot of our honeys we get here that are obviously from lavender farms can be quite pungent. It reminds me of potpourri that my grandmother had. But this is really, really nice and subtle. That's the French word for honey house. So you can see this is the French national size. I think it's an inch higher than everywhere else, which is kind of interesting because they're all got what they call their national hives, and it's just slightly different to everyone else.
Yeah.
So after I was in the south, and I went to just near the Spanish border, and this bloke here is Milan, and. Very, very interesting and lovely blokes. He was a Dutchman, and he got a bit of a hard time being Dutch in France. They actually picked on him, and all the locals really gave him a hard time. So what he found, what he did is he thought, how can I be part of the community? So he joined up as far as being a firefighter. And it was when I first connected, I heard about this Milan, and I thought this is when I was in London. I thought I was going to go to Milan, being Italy, but then I worked out. It took me a while to work this out. It was actually Milan was a bloke, and so he was a Dutchman. So I stayed with him for a week, and very, very interesting. So being obviously a firefighter, a pretty cruisy job over there. They if there were bees in chimneys, obviously they could use all the gear. So that's quite high up actually. So he went up there. And was the bees in the chimney, and the firefighters were saving the bees. What was interesting is so I was there for a week, and they gave me a bit of a bash to sort of for me to head off, and obviously it was quite funny because the amount of alcohol they drank while they were working was like I was a bit sort of happy and pretty giddy, and I'm thinking how these guys, if there's a fire, how are they going to work? Because they were drinking Pernod, there were beers, there were spirits, and yeah, so it's kind of that was interesting. It was an amount of food too. I was very happy. So Milan, he keeps a few hives. He's sort of he's had about 40 hives. He was making an income out of 40 hives, as well as working and being a firefighter. But I put this one here, it's not the best photo. I was having a chat with him last week, just online, and all those hives there, he lost nearly every one in 2 apiaries from deer. So the deer have come through, and there must have been a stag, I'm guessing, and smashed up all the bees. So does anyone, obviously out here, I believe there's a few deer out here. Does anyone have their issues with their hives and deer knocking them over? No. Yeah, so he was absolutely gutted. So so that was pretty tough. He was a bit upset about that. So.
And they seem very narrow. Are there
No. So these, it's probably just my perspective of my photo. Yeah, it is. No, these particular ones are a Langstroth. Okay. Those particular ones, yeah. So they were just a photo, just to be in the perspective. So after France, I thought, while we're close, this is the best thing about Europe. Everywhere's so close. You can just jump on a train in 2 hours. You can be in 2 different countries. So I thought I'd go to Switzerland. And this is just outside, it's about 45 minutes outside of Geneva, and the French-speaking part. His name's Michel, and not a word of English. But for some reason, I ended up having a 4-hour conversation with him. so we're talking about bees, and absolutely lovely bloke. He's on Instagram as Apis Apadea, if anyone's heard of him, Michel. And how he keeps his bees is I've never seen this anywhere else. But you can see his beehives there. They have like little garden beds on top. And so as far as he'd have about 15, and he has these garden beds, and they're really cool. And it obviously helps during insulation for winter and summer, because it does get pretty warm there, because it's on the French sort of side. And really, really cool. So it has these little gardens, and it was fantastic to see that. You can sort of see in that perspective. That shot from my drone. So all these little garden beds in here. It was fantastic to sort of see that. One negative, bloody heavy. So they were really, really heavy. So you'd have to sort of get them right off. So, but as far as for hobbyist beekeepers, it's a great idea. You could make something up like that, and it'd be really sort of got that nice ornamental sort of look. And that's his particular honey. He sells that. It was 12 euros, so it's probably equivalent to about $20 for half a kilo. So, and he can't keep up. So, and it's really good as far as the honey, the awareness around everywhere, where people are just knowing and learning about honey. And I'm sure that's why some of you people here want to keep bees, because we hear on the media and so forth about dodgy honey. And it's really interesting, and that's around the world, because they have issues with dodgy honey coming out of Poland, because obviously it's a different nationality there and so forth. So now if we can see here, if everyone has a really close look, there are 2 queens in there, both marked blue. Now this is the first time I've ever seen this. They were both marked. Now those 2 queens have been in this hive for over 18 months. So, and they coexisted. So I had seen it short term when you get sort of mother and daughter, but not 2 adults living together. And that was 18 months they've been there. So they're both marked blue. You can sort of see at the top third, and then the bottom third. Yeah, and that was absolutely fascinating to actually see that. So, and it just worked.
So they're not mutilated in any way?
No, not mutilated, no, that's right.
Cut wings
not cut wings, no damaged legs, complete. The only thing is just the 2 blue dots on them to identify them, nice and easy. But they were 2 queens, so that was fascinating to see. And I was watching them. I was watching them for about 45 minutes, and I'll bump into one another and I just walk away. It was like they didn't recognise each other. So, and it was an interesting laying pattern. It was patchy, but they were both, two queens were doing their thing. So it was amazing to actually see. After there, so I come back home and I got itchy feet, wanted to travel. So I thought, well, where can we go? You know, need a tax deduction. So I thought, why not Vietnam? I hear Vietnam's sort of nice and maybe a bit warm. So I decided to go to Vietnam, and as I said, whenever I travel, I find beekeepers. So so it's been probably good things and bad things. It's been a demise of two long-term relationships. Because used to drag them along to various countries, ex-wife and an ex-girlfriend, and I think they got the shits after a while. But I found a new girlfriend. So she's South American, so it's she's right in the bead. So that's a very, I probably should have learned that a long time ago, but it's which is really good. So decided to go to Vietnam, and so these now different type of bees. So we have here what everyone would be keeping in Victoria is the European honeybee, the Apis mellifera. We do have the Asian honeybee. It's up in Townsville and Darwin, I believe, which is the Apis cerana. So it's a little bit different bee. So it's an Asian honeybee. It's a little bit smaller. Doesn't produce as much honey. I think it produces up to 5 kilos per year. That's up to 5 kilos as opposed to the Europeans. But over in Vietnam, so this was 2 hours north of Hanoi, so it's in the north part of Vietnam. It was quite hot, and you can see this is how they run their bees. So they're all sort of single boxes, and this is one particular apiary up there. It was really interesting seeing this. It was really hot, and another thing is when I was here, their hygiene's a lot different to us as far as how they live, and there was I got hammered by mosquitoes. And before going, I thought, geez, when I was there, I got hammered by mosquitoes. I thought, I haven't had any malaria shots or anything. And I got back and I got crook. I got really crook. And luckily, I only lasted for 3 days. I was going to drag myself off the hospital. I bounced back. I thought I had some Ross River dengue fever, malaria or something. It wasn't a foodborne thing. It was food. It wasn't nothing like that. But it was really absolutely nailed me. And I don't know if luckily it was just a virus of sorts, but I thought I was cactus. So you can see here, so if you're travelling to Vietnam or any Asian country, just get your shots and malaria tablets if you need that. So that was really cool. So I connected with this lady. Her name was Kim. So she spoke a little bit of English, which was really good because no one speaks English over there, particularly in rural parts. And so she actually drove me. So it was 2 hours north. So it was really good having a driver and a translator. Then you can see here that she's looking at me because everywhere I went, because I'm tall, they looked at me. Someone would touch me, and because I'm so tall. So she's not looking at the bee, she's looking at me. So once again, different style of regards to the bees and the beekeeping. The Asian honeybee, they do a lot better because they need to be in those sort of warm, sort of humid type environments. They do have the European honeybee over there, but they struggle. They've got to be in the more mountainous regions. But sort of really hot, humid, the European honeybee does struggle. So this particular, what they target predominantly over there as far as a honey source is lychees. So when the lychees are in flower, that's one of the biggest ones. Really amazing honey. It's very thin. As far as the Asian honeybee, when it collects the nectar, it's a very thin type honey, but very floral, very fragrant, and beautiful honey.
The hive and frames seem very similar to my Warre hives.
Yes,
very similar size.
Yes. So here's a better photo of the cerana. So you can sort of see there, a lot smaller. I think they're about sort of 20 to 30% smaller than the European honeybee. Obviously you can see there's very distinct stripes. Now what's interesting about the Asian honeybee, I was part of a program, I think it was in 2016, so 3 years ago. they had some varroa come into Townsville that was detected on these Asian honeybees. This varroa was different, so it was the varroa jacobsoni, which is a host on the Asian honeybee, but they've just recently discovered, so when I say recent, 2 years ago, discovered it can actually host shift. So the varroa jacobsoni can shift from the Asian honeybee onto the European honeybee. So there was a big program. I volunteered some time, went up there, and we were looking for these in Townsville. And luckily they were contained. They did find the nest, and that was destroyed, and that was detected to have this varroa jacobsoni. So once again, coming on a ship, and that's how a lot of these incursions of these feral insects, invertebrates, coming on ships. So you can see once again, there's another interesting point about the Asian honeybee. I try to make them sting me just to see, because they're quite small. If they can sting some of my hands, and they do struggle to sting. They're not like the Europeans. They've got a bigger, fatter abdomen with a bigger stinger. With the Asian honeybee, they do sting, but it really got to really make them stinger. So it's kind of good as far as the beekeeping side of things. Because they're harder they don't want to sting as much. It's actually they are a bit more desirable. So you can sort of see there's the brood, and there's the little bit of cap coming up the top.
Ben, are those wooden hives? And also, what's the cap that's over it?
Oh yes. So those, they make everything from scratch. So everything is made. So from even recycled material, because it's a very poor country. Vietnam is very poor. So they'll use anything. So bits of wood and so forth. They're very genius in that aspect. So it's just a wooden hive, wooden frames. Everything's made. All these frames are all cut. And just on the top is the tin, because they get the really bad sort of torrential rains, and that's just to keep that rain out of the hive.
And is it usually just one box? Is it just the brood?
Yes. Usually they run them as one box. They're not, and the honey's on the outside, so they'll take the frames of honey. They'll zip around and take small amounts of frames off the hive, rather than doing what we do with the European bees, and having a super on top, and then taking those. The whole super off, extracting it. They do it a lot different, just because their colonies are a lot smaller. So with the Asian honeybee, they're a lot smaller than the European honeybees. He was an absolute character, this bloke, and he was funny, absolutely funny. He was an absolute laugh. It's funny traveling around, meeting people. Bees and beekeeping. It's almost like a universal language. It's, when you talk about bees, he doesn't know English. I don't know Vietnamese, but we seem to be communicating about bees, and it was fantastic. And as far as talking about how ingenious they are, that there, what I'm holding is a little queen cage. So what they do is they get a little piece of wire, and they twist it around, and this is how they make their queen cage, because they make everything from scratch. Everything. That's just a little piece of wire, and that little queen cage is wrapped, and they have one queen in there. And so when they produce the queens, not like us, where we get like a queen cage and we've got escorts in it. No, she's in by herself. So that's how they introduce, and that's how they make the splits. You can sort of see there. So that's a better way of seeing it. So that queen, she can't get out of that size. So once again, this is the Asian honeybee. She can't actually get out of there. But yeah, it was fantastic to sort of see. Just that slightly different way of beekeeping with a slightly different type of bee, and how they respond to the climate and the honey that they produce. You can sort of see that there, just where I'm pointing, is the queen. The queens, the Asian honeybee, Apis cerana, the queens are very darker, so they're like that German sort of Caucasian, Carnolian sort of look. They're not like the European honeybee, which is sort of golden. The Asian honeybee is a bit more sort of black in sort of colour. And once again, no one really wears a veil, with the Asian honeybee, because obviously all these guys are commercial beekeepers. This is how they make their money. So that's how they do it. But no one wears a veil, because to get an Asian honeybee, they will sting. But to get them to sting you've guys got to push their abdomen into you to make it sting. Yeah, everyone laughs at me because of my height over there. Everywhere I went, so it was kind of a funny thing. So, and that's the lychees. That's the trees there. So they're big on, interesting as far as cultures, and this goes into Europe, big on feeding sugar. It's super interesting. We obviously we need to feed a hive. We'll feed a hive sugar if we need to. Over there, they all do it because it's mandatory for them. So that's why I think our beekeepers in Australia, we're good beekeepers. I really do. You know, over there, they use the nasty A word in their hives, antibiotics. So, and that's to control various brood diseases. So there are brood diseases with the Asian honeybee. Even over in Europe, using antibiotics, it's a common thing. You know, terramycin, it's just a common thing. You buy, go to a beekeeping shop. I went over there and you can buy it over the counter. And the problem with that is, you put an antibiotic into your hive. Now, that's when you're using an antibiotic all the time, the bees build up resistance. You know, so the disease builds up a resistance. So you have that issue there. So that's why it's over there. And they're starting to become problems. When I was talking to the translator, she was sort of saying that they're starting to see that now, where some of these diseases, these brood diseases, aren't getting knocked over from these antibiotics. So this is my last day in Vietnam, and once again, culturally speaking, has anyone here been to Vietnam? I'm sure someone repeats. Yeah, quite a few years. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I absolutely loved it. So I was a chef by trade, so food, I'll eat anything, and no refrigerators in country areas of Vietnam, and I'd never sort of thought, look and see if there's a refrigerator. Anyway, the fish, they've got ponds, bang, if you want fish, it comes out of the pond, but the translator, she's there in the middle left in the blue, her name is Kim. You want chicken? Yeah, I have chicken. It's a pretty staple thing around the world. All of a sudden I hear, this is within a minute, I get a squawk, and I'm looking over, and here's this chicken getting reefed out of the cage, and bang, literally almost in front of me, its head taken off, it's plucked. 25 minutes later, I was eating it. And I thought, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Well, at least it's fresh. At least it is fresh. So as far as poultry, so it was really good to see, the travelling aspect of me going overseas. It really opens up your eyes to sort of see how people do things and learning. That's the thing is with bees and beekeeping, you can't know enough. And you just to see how, seeing certain things. And it was really interesting. I saw, this is, I actually saw this this is in Australia, this is in Renmark, last year. There was doing a bit of a talk on the bees on the almonds. And there was a couple of hobbyist beekeepers around this hive, and there was a big sort of commercial guy. Anyway, he lifts the lid up and a cockroach went running off. And one of the hobbyist beekeepers goes bang with a hive tool and kills the cockroach. The commercial beekeeper, Barry, his name was, he goes, "What'd you do that for?" He says, "Cockroach." Now this is interesting, I've not known this. And this is why it's just so fascinating, why we're always learning so much about bees. He leaves the cockroaches in his hive. Does anyone know why? Cockroaches eat the eggs of the wax moth larvae. And we think, when we naturally, our human assumption is to see a cockroach as a dirty, disgusting animal. But remember that cockroach is actually living inside the hive. So it's not leaving and then coming back and going swimming on cow manure or anything, coming back in the hive. It's actually living in there. It's eating various detritus and eating the wax moth larvae. So that's a little bit of something to think about, because a natural thing is eat a cockroach, you sort of knock it on the head. And most of the time, these cockroaches have got like a little yellow line, like a little GT type stripe. They're the Australian cockroaches, because we don't usually get the German or the American cockroaches. They're a bit more gregarious, and there's a lot more of them. The Australian ones, you'll see one or two. So that's just something to sort of have a think about. So that's the talk. So I was lucky. I was so privileged to go over and travel around, and hopefully, anyone here going to Appomondia in Montreal? So yes, yep. So So what Apomondia is, that's in Montreal I think in September, I think it is, of this year. And Apomondia, even if you're a hobby speaker, you get a chance to go, worth going. I have not been yet. It's one of the biggest beekeeping conferences in the world. They get about 12,000 people go, and it goes for a week. And so if anyone's planning a trip to go overseas, Montreal, Apomondia will be good. So I've just put in an application to do a talk over there. So hopefully, get to do a little bit of a talk, and just on small honey scale production. And so anyway, so thank you everyone. Thank you, Tony. So if there's any so questions. Yes.
With regards to the miticides, you said they actually get into the foundation with wax. How long or how many applications of miticide would it take to ruin a hive? The reason for asking, we've got an apple orchard next to our hives, and he uses miticides.
Yes, okay. So what happens is, so the miticides, I'm told 3 years. Now, as far as the miticides using in an orchard, so I've done some work with Sumitomo, which is a big chemical company who produce a lot of these chemicals they use in orchards, especially apples. Because of that particular application, they don't spray them when they're in flower, so the bees won't be bringing that miticide back into the hive. So that's first positive. But if it was...
What about bees that are foraging on the weeds and the flowers and the...
Okay, on as far as well, it's pretty controlled. Obviously, we have these foggers, when they put the foggers out as far as those particular sprays, but they're pretty controlled within, because there's certain legalities, we can't have certain spray drift. So when it comes to all these chemicals, obviously I'm against chemicals, but I've sort of done some work with chemicals and seen how they use them. There's very controlled ways. If they do the wrong thing, there's massive fines for doing it. The other thing is too, the cost on some chemicals are astronomical. I do a bit of work with a pollination orchard in Coldstream. They get 120 hives off me. Now their chemical bill is $250,000 per year. 250,000 in chemicals. So they really want to control how much they use.